So today we're going to kind of spend most of the class time just kind of meeting with our groups for the first time. I'm not sure if we need to go through the groups. I'll go through it when we get there. I'm not sure how Canvas lets you know that groups were created. But groups were created. Before that, we want to just cover a little bit, kind of warm us up to thinking about what we're going to be doing today. We have a couple of activities to work on. But let's start with, again, just like, all right, so imagine you were asked, I want to study satisfaction with college experience. This is a big question for Stonehill. They want to see if their alumni and students are satisfied with their education. So if we were Stonehill, how might we investigate this? How can we measure satisfaction? Yeah. Okay, and what are you putting on that survey? Rate your overall experience with Stonehill, right? And so 1 would be like a really bad experience at Stonehill, and 5 would be a really good experience at Stonehill, right? And whatever you say is your satisfaction with your college experience here at Stonehill, okay? So we got kind of send out a survey, ask your overall experience. How might, well, since we all have scarring memories from stats, how might your answer to that question differ the semester you were taking stats versus maybe this semester when you're not taking stats? Be any different or pretty much be the same? Yeah.
If you were just taking stats, I would rate it a lot lower.
A lot lower, right? Okay, so there's a problem there. Depends on when I ask you, you might give me a very different answer. And so Stonehill's only going to ask you that question when they check your transcript and they're like, oh, you're not taking stats anymore. Great, time to ask, right? But so how might we deal with that, right? Like I asked you, and it turns out I asked you during your stats semester. What can I do to maybe make Stonehill and the data look a little nicer? Or find out what your true feelings are, right? Let's just say that you actually really like Stonehill. It was just that stats semester, right? That killed it. So what can I do if I did ask you during your stats semester, but I want to get at like the truth, right? Because I don't think you actually do have a 1 for Stonehill overall, right? It was just that stats semester. So what can I do instead? Or what can I do to address that, maybe, not instead?
You want to bring up, you're asking about the positive content out of the class, is that what you're asking?
Maybe, I mean, that could be one way, right? So like, okay, maybe the question is more direct, right? Like, tell me about how positive your experience was at Stonehill or something, right? That might do it. I'm Stonehill. I have more money than I can think of, and I don't want to give any of it to Dr. Seek, so I'm going to spend it on things like surveys instead. So what can I do? You have unlimited money. Anyone parent went to Stonehill? You know, we have a big, awesome, great, you know. I imagine when they took stats, if they had to take stats here this year, that they had the same thing. It was a terrible semester. So if I went to them now, they might have a different memory of it, right? So why might it be good to go to them now? Like, how is that different? Good. So they've already graduated, right? They didn't just take stats. So I could ask them that semester they took stats, and they'd be like, but then if I ask them again, right, they might change their answer. So we can ask multiple times, right? Like that's the way to get through this. So yeah, you might have one bad experience, but if I ask you the next year, and then the next year, and then the next year, and ask you all 4 years, and maybe the year after you graduate, right, I'm going to get to some better sense of your Stonehill experience, right? So I could ask you continuously. I could keep asking you and see what your average is, right? Most math we're going to do today, saying the word average. Okay, so how else? We have self-report, right? Like just tell me how many, how much you like Stonehill? What are some ways I could observe your satisfaction? I'm not gonna ask, I just wanna kind of like look at information that I as Stonehill might have, or your behavior, I might just stalk you. Or am I looking for? Say, this person seems satisfied, or this person doesn't seem satisfied.
Like on-campus engagement, like what students like to participate in, or like what events they like to do.
Okay, great. And so what would a satisfied student look like for on-campus engagement that a dissatisfied student would look like, you know? What would make them different? Like, how are you gonna define participating and engaging? I wanna know if you participate in engaging campus, like what do I need to look for? To what? Events, right? So like, do you go to an event? And or maybe how many events do you go to? Right, so we have events. What other things could you do that a disengaged student might not do? Not just go to events, but really, we had a whole thing on Thursday about it, out on the green quad thingy. People had candy happening. Join the club. How many clubs are you a part of? Or how many sport teams are you a member of, right? Like the more clubs you're a part of, potentially the more satisfied you are with Stonehill. Yeah. One thing I think about too, there's another one we can look at. So these are all great, right? Stonehill, very, what would we call it? Like a closed campus. Yeah. Let's be honest. Easton, not the most exciting place. I don't know. Maybe there's a really hopping club outside that I don't know about. So, and we do have a strong commuter population. So when I'm thinking about this, I'm actually kind of excluding the commuters from my thought. And that's unfair, but just thinking. So on-campus students, we had a carnival on whatever night that was. We had all these things. What would have made it impossible for you to go to the carnival? Ooh, good one. Yeah, I was not thinking about that, but yes, that'd be a good one. Sure. Yeah, so if you're working during that time, good. If you have a job, where are you probably? At your job, great. Where would your job most likely be?
Not here.
Not here, right? If you were literally not here, what if you went home for the weekend, right? Like how many weekends do you go home? And maybe that is related to your dissatisfaction. We'd expect people who like campus would want to stay at campus. And so we could just count how many weekends are you home versus on campus, and then say that might represent your satisfaction with campus. Maybe, yeah. Okay, so we can ask people to self-report, and that tells us something about what they like, right? How much you like campus. We can observe their behavior, so just count how many clubs they're a part of, how many weekends they stay on campus, or maybe you just love Stonehill so much. You're like a super senior. And it's not that you can't graduate, you can. You just want to keep taking courses and give Stonehill money. I don't know why. Thank you, I guess. Some penny of that goes to me. But potentially, like the number of courses, right? Like that could be potentially a bad indicator, but something that might represent your love of Stonehill. You're just like, give all my money forever. And so that would be more observational, right? These are all ways that we can observe your behavior. And what about, so the last way we can understand your behavior is like your physiological reactions, right? Your body. Now this is gonna be a little weird, nothing that we could possibly do, but again, remember Stonehill, unlimited budget. They're rich. And if we dissolve, what is it? Duke gets all of our money, so you know, Duke's rich. Is it Duke? I don't know. Notre Dame. That's it. Must be Notre Dame. Yeah, thanks. I always mix them up. I don't know college. Notre Dame gets all of our money. So, how might we use our physiological reactions to examine your satisfaction with college experience. What happens when you're in love? I know it's falling in love yet. I get that. What happens when you fall in love? You see someone, you're like, wow, they seem special. Or like, damn, what a fine butt. I wasn't going there, but like, I guess. Well, yeah, what happens to your heartbeat? It increases, right? Your heartbeat increases, like, oh, butterflies. Wow, they're amazing. And so we could show you pictures of Stonehill and show you pictures of Notre Dame and see if your heart flutters, beats differently, right? When you see pictures of Stonehill's campus, you're like, that'd be one way to measure your satisfaction, right? We can use like physiological markers, or maybe if you're really dissatisfied, and you see pictures of Stonehill, like I look at my phone and it's ringing and it says dad on it. For me, you know what happens to my body? It goes up. Look, look, my stress. Yeah, stress shoots up. So I show you a picture of Stonehill, and when your stress goes through the roof, and we're like, oh, okay, maybe this isn't the best place for you, right? Like you're seem really stressed every time you're reminded of college. That shouldn't be the way you experience. So we can think about anything that we want to see in the world, something like satisfaction with your college experience, and look at it in 1,000 different ways. Right, and so those are the three ways we generally can operationalize things. We can ask people to self-report them. We can try to just observe their behavior, and we can use the physiological markers that they have, so their stress, their heartbeats, the blood pressure, all these things to also try to make a guess about how they feel.
Hi, humans. So if you're keeping count at home, you might be.
Sorry, I'm gonna pull up another 100 humans thing. We got this. We have 7. Okay, and if music affects your ability to take risks, and how did they test this music piece? What do they do to see if music helps you take risks? Yeah.
Music and the other half of bad music.
Okay, so they split people in half. Half the group listen to upbeat music, half listen to sad music, right? Whatever that means. Okay, and then how did they operationalize this idea of taking risks?
And whether or not they'd be willing to stand in the human frame of Jack Daggers.
Yes, will they stand in the human little frame of Jack Dagger's next knife throw? So I think first, maybe we can just try to tackle like, do you believe this? All right, so the results show that it was, I already forgot, 86 versus 57. So happy music causes people to accept more risk. Just like on vibes, we haven't really touched on like actually. But are you convinced? Ellie, you're saying no. Why aren't you totally convinced?
Like I know the results showed 83% and 57%, but if it was like 83% and 2%, I might be more convinced, but I just don't think it's good. But
Okay, so not big enough of a difference for you. Right, was that the only reason why I thought it wasn't a good study?
Study in itself, but finding the data is more convincing, but, you know.
Okay, Etta thinks the study is weird. Anyone wanna elaborate on Etta's point? Why does the study feel weird to you? Yeah. Yeah, I imagine they told that to everybody, right? So like the sad music people and the happy music people both got told the same information, uh, for the most part, about his professional knife throwing abilities at least. So that shouldn't change like which groups are doing more or less, since everybody got that same knowledge, right? Everyone is told you're a knife thrower. Now it could be that, well, I know, so like I'm going to take more risk as an individual, right? Like maybe that's what you're trying to say. Like in real life, you don't know if someone's professional or not. They're just throwing an axe. But you know, at least for the happy versus sad comparison, they both know that information. Yeah. Okay. So Anna.
We think that the study would be more valid if they had people sit alone in a room just listening to music. Because I feel like the happy music people are more apt to talk to each other about random things in their life. Because they were in the room for an hour, they're not just gonna be dancing and not talking for an hour. And like, I don't know this for sure, but I'm gonna assume that the people who are listening to the sad music were not as danced talking to each other.
Mm.
I think like being in a group has a big impact on the experience.
Okay, so you're noting that even though they both were in a group together, both groups had the same thing, right? In a group listening to music, you're suggesting it's actually might be different because we don't know, based on the video, what they were doing in that room. And you're saying that being in a group with happy music, you're more likely to talk versus room, sad music, you might be thinking like elevator or library, and so you might stay a little more quiet, right? And so now, do we know if it's the music or is it the talking to each other, right? Great. All right, so that's a problem. We don't know what part of our experimental manipulation is affecting the results. Was it happy music or was it talking? How, it's gonna be a hard one. So if we could redo it, what would you want to do? You said keep them separate, right? Like just like dance by yourself if you want. So that's one way to do it, right? Take out the group aspect. Love that. You can't talk to anybody if there's no one else in the room. Great. Um, what's another way we could do that? So that is one solution, right? Like put everyone in individual rooms and make them sit there and listen for an hour. Yeah.
To give the demo, but don't tell them he's a professional.
Okay. So we also can look at whether or not being told he's a professional or not will have an impact on things. So Edo was saying that we have happy music or sad music, but this is probably happy music plus talking. And this is sad music plus no talking. Right, that was your kind of concern here. So we have these two groups. Can we add additional groups to alleviate your concern? They seem willing to do pretty much anything, right? So what if we make a third group of people listen to that happy music? But what do we tell them? What can make them different than this group? No talking, right? Whether we tell them that or we bound and gag them, who knows, right? But we tell them no talking. And what about our sad music people? What can we tell them to make them different? Tell them to talk. Right? Well, if we had four groups like this, then we could know what that difference is, right? We'll get more into like why we would do this later on in the semester. Maybe you would have learned about it at the end of stats potentially, but still, right? That's one way we could solve this. We need to add more comparison groups because, as Etta pointed out, there's this like problem occurring. So let's just keep adding groups until we solve that problem. Cool. Now, a very different question, but they researched the question, happy music causes people to accept more risk. You ask that question. Say in your head if you want to. Does happy music cause people to accept more risk? Question mark. Why would that thought come into your head? What might you be doing? I could leave that thought to appear in your head. I mean, millions of reasons. What might one thing occur in your life that might make you ask that question? What might you be listening to when this question pops up in your head? Happy music. Okay, so you're listening to happy music. You're somewhere. I don't know. How many people are over 21? Exactly. So no one is listening to happy music at a party or some kind. Actually, this is great. You're all listening to happy music at a party, and there's no illegal things being drunk, right? It's just we've controlled for this. There's no alcohol because you can't drink. So you're all listening to happy music, and then someone who clearly has not consumed any alcohol jumps off the roof, and you're just like, wow. I wonder if listening to happy music makes people take more risks, because that lame house over there with their lights off, they're probably listening to sad music, and I don't see anyone jumping off that roof. Yeah? Do you see how that could occur in your life? You might make a, I wonder. And we can ask this question in a lot of ways, right? Like, if you're working in a restaurant, right? Do people tip more if I smile at them? If I drink coffee at night, do I struggle to go to bed or do I sleep worse? Or, do people perceive Dr. C as more of a Carrie Underwood or more of a Celine Dion? These are all really important, interesting questions that might pop up in your head at any time, right? Celine Dion, ninth cousin. We'll never get any of that money. It's too bad. And so all these questions that pop up in our heads are research questions, right? When you experience the world, you are engaging in research, whether you know it or not. You decide like, ooh, you know what? This food, I don't really like this food. It makes me sick. Great, that was an experiment. Now, how did you decide whether or not drinking coffee makes me sleep worse? Well, there were some nights you drank coffee at night. And you ask yourself the next day, wow, that was a terrible night's sleep, right? How was my sleep? Say that was terrible. How do I know whether or not drinking coffee at night makes me sleep worse? What might I do some other nights? Don't drink coffee at night, right? There's probably some night in my life that I didn't drink coffee at night, right? So don't drink coffee at night. And that's, I'm sure, what the people at the happy party were drinking. It was just coffee. Don't drink coffee at night. And we ask ourselves the same question, right? How was my sleep? And so what you're doing here, right, is we're creating comparison groups. We have a group that we're interested in, and we have a group that we're trying to compare it against. So for example, your book talks about this fact that surgeons had believed that there was only like one good way to deal with breast cancer. and that's to remove the breast. And as such, no one tested anything else. They just assumed, like, this works, let's do this. And they never had a comparison group. They just assumed that anything else would be worse. That's not great. Because instead, what they ended up finding out was that whether or not there were differences in other methods, right? Like, what if there was this special method to deal with breast cancer that they just never tried because they never had a comparison group? And really, once we started trying other solutions, we found they're the same, right? Like, you don't have to go to such a drastic measure a lot of the time. You can probably do other things. But we only know that because we created a comparison group. Comparison groups are really important. They help us understand, does drinking coffee at night help my sleep or hurt my sleep? If I'm only every night I drink coffee, I'm not going to have any understanding of if it hurts or harms my sleep. So, for example, we have something called confounds. And that is, there's good research that shows drinking coffee leads to heart attacks. But that's not to say if you drink coffee, you're going to get a heart attack. Right? Hopefully not. So I just had one this morning. And so a confound is something that influences both things. So you can see here this arrow points to the left towards coffee. If you have this thing, you're more likely to drink coffee. And if you have this thing, the more you have of it, the more likely you are to have heart attacks. And if it influences both, then that's a problem. So for coffee and heart attacks, what kind of person, what characteristic of them is more likely to drink coffee? Than not. We can think of my nephew, Noah. He's 6, 8. I have no idea. I'm not a good uncle. People who sleep less drink more or less coffee. So the more you sleep, the less coffee you need, ideally, right? I think that's the goal. Yeah, if only, but I'm addicted to coffee. But yeah, sure, that's a good one too. So sleep, right? So if you sleep, the more you sleep, as this increases, you said less, right? So there's a negative relationship here. As I increase in sleep, I'm going to decrease in coffee. And maybe some of our biologists in the room or health science people can tell us that indeed, as you sleep more, you're less likely to later in life have heart attacks. Right? So increasing sleep also reduces your risk of a heart attack. So sleep is a confound in this relationship. Great one. I don't think Noah's concerned about his sleep. I think he sleeps through the night. But sleep is one, right? There can be thousands of confounds. What is different from Noah and his dad, my brother? Age, right? So the older you get, are you more or less likely to drink coffee? More, right? More likely to drink coffee for age. And the older you get, are you more or less likely to have a heart attack? More, right? So now we have two different ways, which is great. And so age is also a confound in this relationship because age both increases my consumption of coffee and increases my chance of a heart attack. And so this relationship that we see, coffee leads to heart attack, might actually be explained by age. And so confounds are just something like think about, like, oh, is there this third thing going on here that's impacting both? And we call them confounds. try another. So in this study, they were trying to test catharsis. It is a Freudian term. Does anyone know what catharsis means? Yeah, there's a hand. Taking out your anger, right? It's this idea that like I will feel emotionally relieved if I punch a wall. Right? You're angry, punch a wall. Punch your pillow, scream into your pillowcase, right? These kind of things express your anger. And so what they did is they asked undergraduates to write a political essay. So they write some essay, and then someone else reads it. If they think that they're in the experiment too, like we're going to pair up, and you're going to read mine, I'm going to read yours. But this person's in on the experiment. So whatever you write, they're going to take the opposite side of and be like, you're an idiot. Right? And they're going to get you upset because you wrote out something that's personal to you. And they are just going to say it's the worst essay he's ever read and makes other rude comments, gives you a U minus, and you're just like, what does a U minus mean? All of these things. And so after you experience this, you're told, please sit quietly, punch a punching bag, or punch your partner, who in this example in our heads is me. Punch a punching bag that has Dr. C's face on it. Right? This is the partner who just insulted you, said it's the worst thing you've ever read. So they get these three things. And then, after they're done sitting quietly, punching a punching bag, please exercise for a little bit, or punch the person who just insulted you's imagined face. You say, Dr. C's going to put on some headphones, and you get to turn up the volume as loud as you want on this blaring, awful sound. How loud do you want to make that sound? And what they found is that if you punch Dr. C's face, you really increase that sound, which is kind of the opposite of what catharsis would think. You've taken your anger out on Dr. C's face. You shouldn't want to be aggressive to him later. You already were aggressive to him. But actually, being aggressive to him, what did it do? It made you be even more aggressive later on. Right? Punching, taking your anger out on something, does not lead to reductions in anger. It actually leads to increases in anger and future aggression. Now, there is something that they did here. There are three groups you can see, right? Group 1, group 2, and group 3. One of these, well, it's not this one. We're gonna ignore that. Why do they have two ways to punch? Why does that matter? Why does it matter what I'm punching? We don't need to necessarily even look at the graph right now. Just thinking like, we have these two groups. One punches a punching bag, and one punches a punching bag that has a cutout picture of my face on it. You're punching, so like, isn't that good enough? Like, why are they adding this additional layer?
Maybe the visual image of somebody's face on it helps the person process their emotions. In a sense, like essentially seeing an object, it's like, oh, this is almost like a where I was punching this person up like crazy.
Yeah, right. So like one of them, I'm just punching, right? One of them, I'm punching Dr. C's face. If we didn't have this punching bag exercise thing, someone could say, well, is it the punching or is it the punching Dr. C's face? Right? Like what is being explained here? Is it the music or is it the talking during the music? Right? And so they're like, you're right. There's two things going on here. you're punching something and you're punching the person who insulted you. So let's separate that, right? Let's create another group where you're just punching them. Right. And that doesn't have a space on it, so now we can see a difference. Right? And indeed, that also seems to be fine, right? Taking out, getting some exercise, that's good. That's healthy. It's when you make that, like, little voodoo doll and you're stabbing it with the needle. That's when that's not going to go so well for you. So if you see your roommate, a little voodoo doll of me, and there's a voodoo doll of like a gorilla behind me, well, let me know. I don't want to face that. Okay. Let's get that. So overall, right, when we're thinking about how do we test things, what do we test? It's important for us just to first ask ourselves, what am I interested in? There's so much in the world to be interested in, and it seems like a impossible question because I can be interested in a ton of things. But say I'm interested in one second, coming up with an example. How do people recognize face? Right? I tend to be terrible at that. You see someone super embarrassing. I was at the chess tournament all weekend this weekend, and someone student came to play for one night. He just wanted to play a little bit, and I was like, "Oh, hey, thanks for coming. Do I know?" They're like, "Yeah, I'm in your class." I'm like, "Oh, okay, I must be a new student." And I was like, "Oh, what class?" He's like, "Social last semester and intro before that." And to be fair, they weren't wearing glasses, and I was like, "That's it." I was like, "You got a haircut?" And they're like, "Sure." I was like, "Damn." And I went home. I was like, "You weren't wearing glasses. That's why." And they were like, "Yes, I wasn't wearing my glasses." And so we might be interested in how do people recognize faces if they're, digitally edited to look like aliens, right? Digital alien faces versus just normal faces. Right? That's the two kind of groups I'm interested to know about, this one or that one. And so then, once we start thinking about what might be different here, I might then start asking about, how might you measure this? Right, so the same thing again, when we think about that picky eater study, they probably were out at a restaurant eating, and they were like, huh, I wonder if we judge people differently based on what you choose to eat. Or maybe someone telling a story like, oh my God, you wouldn't believe it. This person that I went out to eat with did this thing, or went on a date with did this thing. And then you're like, huh, I wonder if everyone judges that person differently. Right? Think about your daily experiences and then try to see how that answers questions. Okay. So let us this out. Four, 2, 4, 8, 12, 16, 18. Okay. Versus 6. 3 versus 6. We're all gonna go by rows. So maybe we stand up on it and we'll crowd around the table. It's fine. We'll figure it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Have that.
It was my lawn.
Big three of them. And then that's that, then we'll take the other three. Like, take you pick three out of random and then that'll be your three.
Oh.
Gotcha. Your group all needs three.
Three.
Definitely different. You need to balance the times of five backwards. So you think that each get one. Or one pack. In the end, everyone should have 5 orange cards. And, as a group of 6, so again, we're gonna have to stand up to move to our group of 6, 3 white cards. Or find a way to turn around so you get forward to your group. Back, we're gonna need to swing your chairs around the other side of your table. And you move your table back to give yourself some room, whatever you need to do. We're all one big family of 6, 5. No more. Come to the edge of this table. Play the game. All right, so. Very straightforward. Each group needs to pick a judge. Volunteer yourselves, one person needs to be a judge. All right, we got our judges. So now all you need to do is the judge is going to flip over one of these white cards. When they do, you look at your 5 cards and you place it on the y-axis. So graphs like this. The judge describes what is happening in the chart. So it might say, okay, this is organization level where it's high for backpack full of random papers and it goes down to color-coded notes. And your job is to look at your cards of 5 and put a y-axis here. All right, and then the judge, let's see, the judge shuffles them and then decides which one's funny. It's apples to apples, but nerdy, all right?
Yeah.
We can do this. All right. Yeah,
So is judge switch every round? or-
yeah,
Okay.
whoever wins and they become the judge.
So this is stages feature. I don't know that one.
Remember, played apples to apples, you put yours face down in the middle. Once everyone's put them in face down in the middle, the judge picks them up, shuffles them a little bit, reads them out one by one, decides which one the favorite is.
So the only piece I'm doing as the judge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the judge could do whatever they want.
Right? Y-axis. Error or what feature level group. Level.
It might help to put the y on the y-axis so you can see it, right? Otherwise, help see how it graphs. As you read each one, see how it graphs.
Ability for. Sorry.
Nice. Speaking of, yeah. It's just how you phrase it. It's just becoming George. Frequency is switch. I'm sort of being, I don't think it's. Maybe made a close section. You guys might believe that there was something that kind of fell in. Remember, sometimes you see the name of the violence.
So when you get all three done, then lay out like the 3 white cards and the 3 like winning ones, right? Like have it displayed what your 3 are. Your 3 winning combinations. Down in the game, but you can join this group over here. Watch. Alright, yeah, so lay out your 3 are the winners. And like the 3 graphs, right? Like recreate your 3 winners.
Then you go naturally. I think it's here day. It's like a little bit scary. Okay, that's a little bit of the juice.
All right, so now you have. Like a move the orange to the left side. Three, that's all. So you have 3 different kind of relationships in front of you. As a group, try to talk out like how would they have researched this, right? So for example, you want belief that you are special and size of muscle, right? So what would they have needed to do to bring the intro kids into a room and find out, believe that they are special versus the size of their muscles, right? What would they need to have done in a study to come up with this relationship? Okay, so you have 3 to kind of imagine what their research looked like. How do they investigate these questions?
It really makes
Ability to develop the same method of
So,
assessment.
yeah, more frequently, I mean. There was like something about
Okay, so if we're going to use an experiment to make some kind of claim that indeed the more muscles you have, the more special you think you are, there are some important considerations we need to have to say that muscle mass causes special feelings. And the first one is called covariance, and that just means that it works. We do see this relationship. As something increases, the other thing also changes on a relatively consistent basis, right? So as I increase something, something consistently happens to the other thing. So maybe as muscle mass increases, consistently on average, we do see more feelings of being special. That's covariance. The second one is what we call temporal precedent. And that just means we have to be wary of time. Now that's actually kind of hard in our muscle mass study because maybe couldn't it be the case that the more special I feel, the more likely I want to go to the gym? And if that's the case, then we might not have that. On the other hand, we had what if we just put two people, randomly put this class into two groups and forced half of you to get really ripped and forced half of you to not get ripped, right? Then muscle mass came first, and then afterwards we asked you, how special do you feel? Right, so a lot of the times in experiments, when we manipulate something, we do the manipulation first, and then we measure what we're interested in. So that way we have this temporal order thing, that whatever we did to you happened before I asked you what I cared about. Right, so that kind of solves this temporal precedent thing, that I manipulated something and then I measure what it is I'm interested in measuring. And the third one is this idea of internal validity, just that everything is controlled for. We really tried to think through alternative explanations. In experiments in psychology, this is generally where things fail, or it's not going to be perfect. And this is why we generally can't claim causality, even in the best studies, because there's always going to be something else, potentially, that could explain this. This was the kid-friendly edition. There's also the non-kid-friendly edition that I did not open up. Honestly, the kid-friendly graphs are funnier. And so when we're thinking about how do we claim causality, we need to kind of have all three of these checked. So experiments can claim causality because they have independent variables, things that we're manipulating, or things that we think will matter in a difference on things. We have our dependent variable, what we're interested in seeing if it changes. And in an experiment, 99% of the time, we randomly assign people. So you're just as likely to be put into the, now you are going to be forced to go to the gym for the whole semester. And you're just as likely to be forced to not go to the gym. It would be bad in not random assignment if I did half of the class like left and the other on the right. because maybe there's some special characteristic of people who sit on this side of the room, right? It's not random anymore. Why did you pick this side? I don't know. So it has to be random, which means that we use computers to tell us, randomly assign you into things, right? I'm trying to randomly assign you. I probably am doing it poorly. People mix these up a lot, independent and dependent variables. And so try to say independent variables a lot of the time tend to be the groups, right? When we're looking at experiments, first thing, especially in research methods, try to keep things pretty basic. So you're looking at groups. Right? So gender might be one, or gym attendant. In research papers, they tend to not necessarily put people into groups. So you could measure it. You could imagine it's not just gym attendance, but how many days in the week. And you have some people who say 1 day a week, 2 days a week, 3 days a week, 4 days a week, 5 days a week, 6 days. Right? And it's not necessarily each person in a group, it's just a number, like a one variable. We're not going to think like that. If you ever want to do things like that, we're always going to split them into groups. Just makes our goals easier. So we're always looking for groups. And if I ever give you an example of things in like on an exam or quiz, right, it's always going to be look for groups. Dependent variables are things we hope change, right? Like what will change? Ideally change. And so we're hoping that there's a difference in belief that they're special, right? Special. Or ability to recognize faces. Right? Something that we're trying to measure that's different about them. We'll get to these next week. I want to get some now. In order to do your project this semester, you're going to need to rely on psychological research, right? Actual peer-reviewed studies. Peer-reviewed studies come in a variety of ways. They generally will look something like this, where the top of it is nice and fancy. It has information in the top. There's a big heading here. It's beautifully formatted. That is a journal article. And if it looks like a web page, probably not what you want. There are fake journals out there. I will be able to recognize them without you. It's okay if you find it and think it's good. I'll just tell you, hey, great job finding this article. Please don't use it. It's not real. You can see they all kind of have this general format at the top, right? That there's something that looks different. It's not just a web page, it's something fancy. But what I would like us to do, kind of for the rest of class, at least for the next like 10 minutes or so, is I think on Canvas, if you couldn't see it before, I have fixed it, but ideally you can. You should be able to go to people and there should be a tab for groups or something. And you can see who's in your group. I don't know. I can't see this on student views. I could on laptop see what it looks like. And you click on that. These are people.
Wow.
Great. So what did you get there? Sorry.
Groups on the purple bar. Yeah, and then people.
Okay, so on the purple bar, you click groups, and then it showed you group A something. Then from that, you can click people, and I'll show you who is in your group. Thank you. All right, so first thing we need to do is find our groups. If you're not sitting next to your group member, we need to kind of pick up and move around our things. But what I would like us to do, once we now found our groups in the assignments, there's an assignment called Submit Top Topics. Now, what I've tried to do, and we do this for all research methods classes, is I've screened a ton of papers. But the thing is, like, they're papers that I like, and so it's a very small subset of papers. So first thing, just kind of read the headings. They're in bold. And say, like, do any of these headings sound interesting to you? Then you can judge a book by its cover and read the title and say, does any of that sound interesting to you? And if none of them do, also just say, like, hi, I'm Kevin. I have no idea what I'm doing in this class. Introduce yourself. But say, like, now that I've thought about it a little bit, there's this thing that's happened in my life that I'm interested in studying. The goal is that we replicate a paper that's been published, but it's important that we're replicating something that we're actually interested in. So these have all been screened by me. If you're like, these all sound boring, Dr. C, you have terrible taste in research. Cool. Let's figure out what your group wants to study, and we can find a paper that you can replicate. Yeah. I think a big thing in research is that a lot of it is just like, you can read a story about someone and then kind of like, how do you think about them, right? And a lot of these are like that. Or it's just like, put people into groups, see how they view someone else. Person perception is what it's called, and it's very easy to do, and that tends to be a lot of them. But so read through this list, look at the headings, and then kind of start having a conversation with your group members. Is there anything on this list that you hate? Is there anything on this that you really like? Does all this list sound terrible, right? If you have any questions on what these headings mean, I can talk to you about them. I know you have to run, so you should be running. It's all right. You know,
Should be
and so spend some time talking to your group members about what sounds interesting, right? It doesn't mean that's what you're going to do, but like just start thinking, talking, getting to know each other, getting to know topics. Here's a list of various things. Communicate verbally. Will be stuff. And I'll kind of walk around and see how things are going, how conversation's going. Does that all make sense? Okay. If we need to move our seats and find our group members, we should go and do that. So if you're done, first off, please recognize that that assignment's not officially due until the 12th, right? Like you got some time. But there's no way for me to really police this, but keep it on your mind that whatever you have chosen, you should at some point, maybe within the next week or so, download those two off of Canvas and try to read them. Right? Do your best. For the most part, if you're trying to read them, focus on the methods part, because that's what we really care about. Like, how did they do that? Can you understand what they were trying to do? Focus on the intro, like why they're interested in this thing. The methods, you can skip the stats. The discussion will tell you what they found. The pretty graphs should tell you something about what they found. But when you pick your articles, know that you're kind of holding yourself and your group members accountable to reading said articles. Yeah. We have class on Monday where it's D3 week. I have not heard what they're doing for events this D3 week. I need to follow up on that. They usually have like someone come and do stuff, but I haven't heard what they're doing this year. So look out for just emails about events for D3 week next week. And if you're good and you feel like your group has maybe an idea of things that you're interested in looking more into, that's good with me. And we'll meet and talk more on Monday. Okay?